welcome back to the Uncontested podcast. My name is Chelsea Peace. I'm transformational coach here in Flagler County, and I'm here with Stacy Geiger of Geiger Law. We're having the conversation that I don't know that anybody in our fields have had in regards to divorce and how we can use it as an opportunity to find the next version of ourselves versus staying stuck in a legal battle or staying stuck in a mindset that's not serving us as we try to transition into the next season of our lives. So when we looked at last week, we opened the case and we talk about how the freedom that you're being offered in this new step of your life only works if you choose to do the work. And this week, we're going to talk about the first mistake that everyone makes, which has nothing to do with your attorney. The legal process was designed to divide assets. It was never designed to heal people. So the decree is going to give you permission, and what you build with it is yours. So I want to go and ask, how many of you thought that if the judge gave the right order or once the paperwork is signed, that you would finally feel safe? And the question that I'm going to queue up for Stacy is, what can the legal process not give someone in a high conflict divorce case?
I can't walk you after it's over. We're not there to hold your hand. We get through, I'm presume that this is with most attorneys. You get through that final order and we're pretty much done.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're on your own to figure it out. So you kind of go back to the beginning and when it first starts, you want to, the attorney's goal is to initially try to maintain a status quo,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because then at least financially, you're on a hopefully an even plane or as close as can be. But once that's done and, you might go from a 10 down to a 2, and that might be the end of the day, but I'm not there. Your attorney's not there to walk you through what a 2 means for you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a very quick short period of time where you need to figure out, what am I going to do? And that's not what the legal process does. And you've been arguing for maybe, a year, maybe 18 months, however long it is. And all of a sudden the arguments are over. And now there's a piece of paper you have to read and it says you get ABC,
Mm-hmm.
but your attorney's not there anymore to hold your hand and get you there.
Right. And I would say that for me in that process, it was, I had to spend a lot of time by myself and ask myself, like, would I be okay if this is the outcome? Like, I had to weigh the pros and the cons and go, like, if the worst case scenario happened, would I be okay? How could I be okay? And that really helped me in the long run. But you were sharing with me earlier that the story is different depending on the different dynamics in the relationship, the different age groups. And so, what happens to people who are stuck in that gap based on the age groups that you see in the divorces that you're helping?
Right. So we're talking across the board, right? I
Mhm.
mean, we've seen, I want to say kids, people, young adults who get married
Mhm.
at 18, 19 years old and they're divorcing mid-20s. That picture is completely different than somebody, and we call it a gray divorce, anyone over 50, who gets divorced at 60 and they've been married for 40 years. I don't want to say obviously, but generally a 23-year-old woman, man who gets divorced is going to bounce back a lot faster because they haven't had time to create a history of financial dependence on one another.
Mhm.
Um, a 64-year-old woman who's been married for 44 years, who might be a stay-at-home mom and then just a homemaker, her situation is just completely flipped upside down when this happens. You're looking at somebody who comes out of it and says, I have a standard of living that I thought would continue,
Mhm.
but it's not going to continue. There's no possible way for the identical standard of living to be maintained post-divorce. In
Right.
in any case, honestly, I mean, unless you're a billionaire, because parties are now maintaining 2 households. And if there's an alimony situation, yeah, there's funds coming in, but it's not the identical amount that was before, right? In your case, you were a joint household. There was dual income for the
Mhm.
most part. And when you separate, all of a sudden, you're maintaining your house, he's maintaining his house, and there's kids.
Right.
So
Right.
kids blow up that gap on top of it.
Right.
So it's there. It depends on each age group, I guess.
That makes sense. And I mean, it makes sense, especially when you think about that gray divorce. I had the pleasure this morning sitting in the DMV, sitting next to a woman who was just in tears.
Right.
And something led me to just look at her and tell her that, like, I'm sorry that you're going through that, but you're doing a great job just by showing up and doing what you need to do today. And we had a really great conversation, but her husband had just passed away. And so I think about divorce, passing away, especially at that age, it's almost like a identity moment where who am I without this person? And that's also another part of it. So now your financials have been completely obliterated in from what you've been used to. Your day to day, what it looked like. And then you're sitting in the middle of a high conflict divorce where you guys are fighting over everything, acting like you didn't know each other 5 minutes ago. And at the end of it all, you sit down with a piece of paper that says, you get this, you get this, you get this. But if you haven't done that work to understand, like, what does my life get to look like now, then it can be really, it can feel lonely. It can feel scary. And you can get stuck in that and just kind of, this is what I'm stuck with. But we've got to get from there to, what do I get to do with this new time? What do I get to do with it? So, Stacy, what does it look like for you from supporting a client, for someone who never closes the gap between who they used to be and what their divorce has offered them?
It's tough. It's difficult, and that's our goal. My goal is to try and make sure that every client walks away at least feeling, I don't want to say like they won, but almost as if they had won something, right?
Mhm.
Um, because there's going to be a giant gap if it's financial. So just a basic statistic, but like your over 50s divorces, those women who leave those, there's a 45% difference in their standard of living, just
That's
from what
huge.
research says, right?
That's huge.
So, on tiny numbers, you're going that like that's if you're thinking that's almost half.
Mhm.
So you're going from being able to do XYZ every day to not, picking out one of those, one and a half of those things. Um, and I have to, uh, as the attorney,
Mhm.
it's my job to try to at least explain that is going to happen and at least try, like you were saying, you have to prepare somebody for that
Yeah.
because it's a huge life change. Um, if we go back to ages, right? So
Mhm.
on your 20-year-olds, it's a little bit simpler. And this is assuming there's no kids, right? Because I think that might be a different episode
Right.
day.
I think we
Because
actually do have that one at some point.
because when there's kids, that's a whole different story. But when there's none, at least they don't have a financial dependency.
Mhm.
Um, but I try and walk everybody through and say, let's look at your finances. And in every divorce, there's going to be an exchange of financials. So when people do come in and it's a hot contested divorce, they're usually, I want to see the other person's and I want to see what they're spending it
Oh my
on. And
gosh.
I wasn't at that hotel and I didn't go to that restaurant. Well, and $100, that's a lot of money for one person to spend at,
Mhm.
an ale house or something like that. Well, they probably weren't alone, but then they have to look at their own finances. And that's a big deal too. And say, okay, well, I had so much money every month and I went to Starbucks every other day.
Mhm.
Okay, that's not going to happen anymore. And, sometimes legal advice, just life advice. This can't happen. You're not going to have those funds. So you're going to have time during this dissolution to reflect on that. But I'm looking at them now. And when I look at your bank accounts, your bank statements, and I see there's Starbucks and there's a DoorDash, let's talk about this
Mhm.
because, what's interesting, and I realize we're kind of going all over
No,
a
no,
little, but
I like it.
what's interesting is that it's not just me. It's, your spouse. That attorney's going through the same thing.
Right.
And they're going to use that as a weapon against you and say, well, you're saying you need this and you need this, but do you need to have Starbucks every day?
Mhm.
I mean, I do. No, just kidding. Uh, do you need to DoorDash? Um, can you get in the car and do it? So it's very line by line. We
Mhm,
go through them. We go through your side. We go through the other side. Um, and that's where I try to close that gap and say, okay, I'm looking at what you're spending,
mhm.
and now uh, on the legal end, I need to be able to explain this and justify this and say that this is a need. This is your standard of living. And I'm going to fight for you and explain all that. But and that's your attorney's job, whether it's me, anybody else. That's what we do, right?
Mhm.
We're here to protect you and explain that this is your standard of living. But at the same time, when the door closes and it's just me and you, I'm going to say that this isn't going to work.
Right, and I think that that's one thing that I see that you helped me with. It was like a reality check, right? Just throwing my own situation out there because that's kind of how we got here, right? Is I went through my own high conflict divorce, and it was a situation where for a year and a half, I wasn't getting the financial support that my kids and I needed to make ends meet. While I still had my job, now I'm having to pay you. Now I'm having to pay for extra childcare. Now I'm having to come up with all of these things that I didn't have to come up with before, and I wasn't getting the financial help from the other side. So, knowing that you were looking at my finances, knowing that his attorney was looking at my finances, I had to go back to myself and say, these are things that I just cannot do anymore. And I had to come to the realization like the single mom version of me, she's got to cut some corners. She no longer gets to go out every weekend and take her kids to Disney World. That was our thing. We loved it. We had to cancel our passes this season of our life, we can't afford that, right? But we found pleasure in other things, and we had to sit down. We had our little family meeting and said, like, mommy's financial situation is different. Daddy doesn't live here anymore. Um, Maybe we don't go to Starbucks anymore. Why don't we learn how to make our own coffee? So we started practicing with different flavors. We watched YouTube videos. And I think that that's a really great opportunity, again, going back to finding who you are in this new process and saying, like, with the financials that I'm going to have after this, even if it's worst case scenario, how can I find happiness with whatever this judge is going to end up giving me or whatever this divorce is going to give me? And that's what I like to help people with. And that's where you give them the real advice, but I like to be the mirror of, okay, Stacy, so cool, you're going through a divorce. Cool, you've lost 45% of the income that you're typically used to. How can you still be happy with that? And let's find that. Let's find what happiness looks like for you. And so I would say that the sooner you can get to that, the better.
All day long.
All day. And then the sooner we can stop looking at the divorce or the separation or the financial loss as the worst thing that ever happened to us, flipping that mindset and saying, like, how can I just become delusional as possible and say, this is the best thing that will ever happen to me? And that was something that I really loved this morning as I was explaining to that woman in the DMV. It was, you know, going through my divorce and losing my job and this like finalized and losing my job, boom, all of a sudden, hey, I was making almost 150 grand a year. And I bought a car like 4 months ago, And while life doesn't look like how good it feels, I had already decided that I'm okay with not having super fancy things anymore. I just love going to the park. I'm okay with not going out of town every weekend. We'll go find a trail in the middle of Palm Coast, and that's our new thing to do.
And that's part of it though, right? Like you are the model of how to turn this into something positive.
Yeah.
But if we were giving that advice to someone going through it now,
Mhm.
the ideal would be find it early on,
Find it
right?
early.
For because the sooner you get there, the better for everybody. And what's unfortunate when it doesn't happen, and especially in these really high conflict divorces, is that you are the person going through it. There's going to be one side that at some point, if it's 8 months, a year, 18 months in, all of a sudden, and it happens often, is they turn to me and say, I'm done. I don't care anymore. give it up.
I did that.
And
I did that.
right, but we
Well,
talked you off the ledge.
you did.
And also, that's the attorney's job to say maybe you reconsider. But our job is to do what you want to do and advise you differently. But it is unfortunate that if that person can't find the new place, their second act, their third act, or just a total reversal. Um, there's a lot of times we get to the point where they throw their hands in the air, and then that, like we discussed last time, that's when we come back
And we're
because
doing it again.
everything, this isn't what I wanted, and I can't believe I did this. I just gave up. You know, sometimes it can't be undone. It's real tricky.
I think that's where it was really important for us to say that. Would you say that it's true 20 to 40% of all the divorces you handle are high conflict? Or is that like inflated?
I haven't looked at exact numbers, but I'm sure that's
It feels
probably
that
on
way.
par. It does
feels
feel that way.
Okay. So it's really important that you pick a great attorney, right? And I'm
think so.
very grateful that I picked you because the very first thing that you did with me is what's the most important thing to you? What would winning look like to you in this situation? And would you be okay with if it was a little less than that? Right. And I think you did a very good job of setting the bar for me to understand like, okay, worst case scenario, best case scenario, we land somewhere in the middle, you're winning. Right. I would say anybody who's looking for an attorney for a divorce, it's very important that they know what your interests are and they know what winning means to you.
You have to find a good fit. And
Yes.
I tell people all the time, don't just, if you are able, most attorneys do have a consultation fee, but if you are able, call more than one, call around, speak with more than one person because, I might be cowboy boots and the other person might be high heels, obviously in reverse, but,
With Mickey ears.
that's right. But, I might not be your fit. I'm
Mhm.
extremely blunt. I may use certain words that people don't like. I'm not everybody's favorite flavor of ice cream.
Mhm.
And when you're in this, because there's so much interaction and dependency on your attorney, you need to feel comfortable with that person.
Goodness.
So you certainly should call and talk to a couple people before you feel comfortable with that person. You feel like I can trust them
Mhm.
with what's about to happen because, on our end, it's a lot of pressure. I can't speak for all attorneys, but I sweat it out. We have any hearing I get, you don't see it, but I'm certainly nervous because it rests on me to do a good job.
Mhm.
And you can't, and I believe this goes across the board. No attorney can guarantee what a judge is going to do.
Right.
We can't say, I know that at the end of the day, you're going to get everything you've asked for, even if all the cards are stacked in your favor,
Mhm.
because I'm not the one making the ultimate decision.
And I think it's important to have a healthy dose of skepticism as well. Like you need to go into it understanding that like while all of the royal flush may be in my favor, going into here thinking that I'm going to win 100% is the wrong way to go about it. That's very egoic and can cause you a lot more heartbreak in the long run, in my opinion. But
Absolutely.
that's
And,
just
and,
me.
you want to be practical, you were saying earlier. So people come in when you first approach an attorney
Mhm.
for a divorce or I guess we could almost paternity actions are very similar, right?
Okay.
Um, when children are involved, but you're going in saying, I want all of this. And we'll have a list a mile long.
Mhm.
And I'm extremely forthright about it. You're probably not going to get 1, 2, 4, and 8. If you don't like those answers, find somebody else who's willing to guarantee it, but I'm not.
Mhm.
You know, it, you we get these sometimes unrealistic expectations, especially when your number one cause of divorce, right? Infidelity.
Mhm.
So you look at this, somebody comes in and says, he left. He's with another person. I should have all of these things. Like, well, Yes, I
Attribution,
agree.
right?
Right, yeah, because I'm angry, and that's a bad guy.
Right.
But the law might not favor that in whatever state you're in, right? I mean, I can speak as to Florida and how it happens, but wherever you are, that might not be how it plays out. So a lot of where you now can step in and speak with somebody and explain, there's a lot of anger at first, and then over time, it can calm down, and if you can find that second act that you wanna focus on,
Yeah.
now you recognize, okay, 1, 3, 4 aren't that important anymore.
Because sometimes 1, 3, and 4 were control tactics, I guess I would say. And I can recognize that in myself of saying, like, I only want this because of this. And then when you step back and look at it, hey, listen, what they do with them on their time is their time. They're exercising, they're parenting. At the end of the day, one day our kids are going to grow up and they're going to remember, they're going to have memories about the experiences they had with us. And that means more to me than controlling whatever outcome. I just want to make sure that the experience they have with me is the ones that they take and tell their kids about and they're super happy about, and let them do whatever they need, and let me not so much focus on winning this battle that we find ourselves in. You know, find some things that you're willing to compromise on to protect your peace.
Right.
That would be a biggest thing there. So I got a reflective question for the audience. What are you waiting for the legal process to give you that isn't actually a legal outcome? So, like that control, that retribution, that validation, apology, the proof that you're not crazy. I want you to write it down because that's not in any courtroom. So, your opportunity to heal right now is kind of, and tell me if I'm wrong, we need to make two columns: the actual legal outcome in one column and the emotional outcome that you're hoping that this process delivers. And then you got to realize that everything in column one would be what your attorney is responsible for. That's what you pay Stacy for. She's going to go and make sure that the legal process shows up for you to control the things that it can. But everything in column number two, those emotional outcomes that you're hoping this process will deliver for you, that's yours. That's yours to build. And if you need help with that, that's what a coach can help you with. But this is all work that you're totally capable of doing on your own. It's just what do, what are you going to do with the time that you've been allotted and with the experience that you're being given? So I'm going to toss it to you, Stacy. What can someone do right now to move their case forward instead of keeping it stuck by using this framework?
So the first thing is no attorney's getting a sorry.
Yeah.
There's not gonna be I don't know one who is part of a final order is just going to be, "And now you have to write an apology note to your ex," you know? "I'm sorry I didn't ever do the dishes, and I'm sorry I, you know, went to Buc-ee's all the time and bought too much jerky." Like, that's you're not getting that,
Mm-mm.
right? What can you do to make the process easier for yourself?
Well, yeah, to move their case forward instead of keeping it stuck. So I would say challenge your thoughts on, like, what are you holding on to so hard right now that
Right.
a legal process isn't going to offer you that's keeping your case stuck?
Right, and that's where we were saying, let's look at make a list.
Mm-hmm.
When you come in, when you sit down and think with yourself, what are the top 10 things I need to walk away with? And then honestly, look at that list,
Start
right?
crossing things off.
Start
So I'm a
crossing
lot
things
of doing
off.
that.
If you're hung up on a Keurig machine, then maybe we reflect on that. I they, I don't.
A squat rack.
Yeah, a squat rack. If it's a squat rack or some sort of, I really want, you know what is even funnier? A bunch of, not funnier, but in reality, photos. Photos come up more often than you think. I want all the kids' photos. Fun fact, Staples has this ability now to photocopy photos, and now we can both have them.
Isn't that
And
technology?
technology has made it easier. So things to consider. I really want these. I'm going to stand on this mountain. Like, why? We can, there, there are ways to fix this second problem, you know?
Mhm.
So if you can look at that list and find a way around one of these numbers, that will push this along much faster.
And that doesn't mean fold on
No,
things that are important
no,
to you, but understanding what things are malleable in the situation.
exactly. So I mean, as simple as, all right, if we did the Keurig, because that's a real thing, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
$70 coffee machine.
uh-huh.
Okay.
People get real angry, and that's
How often have you ever bought someone a Keurig so they would
I've
stop fighting?
offered, I've
Okay,
offered.
I was gonna
Mhm.
say, I figured that's something you would do.
Um, but let's talk about kids, right? If
Okay.
there's I will only exchange at these 2 locations. Is that really a mountain we're gonna die on? Is it you have to go to, the fire station or the Publix down the street? Why? Why are we fighting over that? Let's pick a different location. That's not your mountain, you
Mhm,
know? Um, think long term, you know? And a lot of that list is not long term.
mhm.
Usually, a dissolution divorce list is I'm angry now, and these are the 10 things that matter today.
Right.
So I think the answer to your question is what is one thing that definitely can move it faster, move it ahead is you have your 10 list today, which I'm sure you created right at the front before
Mhm.
you get divorced. And these are the things I want to ask an attorney about in a consultation. Make a secondary list. And that list is what's going to matter to me in 5 years?
I love that.
Because you might have, a new job. Your kids might be graduated from high school. Your kids might not be in daycare anymore, right? I
Mhm.
mean, kids, you have kids for, you keep them forever, ideally, but your kids, your children are with you 18 years.
Mhm.
I mean, in reality, that's on a good day, it's a fifth of your life, right? So if you're looking at a time frame, if you're divorcing or you're about to enter a divorce and your children are 2, your list looks very different
Then if you're
in
saying
5 years because at 2, they might be in daycare, they might be in preschool, they might be with a nanny. A divorce probably is gonna change some of these things,
Mhm.
but in 5 years from now, they're now in elementary school. So, your time with them, if you were a stay-at-home mom and that's your list, your number 1 is, "I'm a stay-at-home mom, I want to be a stay-at-home mom." Okay, but you're probably not gonna be when they're in elementary school, right? Because now they're there from it could be 7 to 5:30 PM.
Right, what are you gonna do with that time?
What are you gonna do with that time?
Yeah.
So, maybe that most important thing is not as important.
Right.
That's something you can work with. You wanna discuss that with your attorney, instead of shouting, "I wanna be a stay-at-home mom." Well, sure, you do right now, but when this is finalized, maybe we just create there's a path where it's only for a couple years where you do that, or there has to be another way because that's not what it's gonna look like. If those same kids are 13 years old and 5 years from now, they're in college, now what? Now your list is very different.
Mhm.
If your list is, "I wanna be able to enroll them in whatever extracurricular activity they want," that is the mountain I am going to die on.
Mhm.
Okay, but maybe that's not going to create a scholarship opportunity for them. So if you're dead set on and I'll just my son plays golf, so is my son gonna get a golf scholarship? I mean, I'd love him to, but let's say he's not.
Mhm.
Then is it that important that he be able to golf every Saturday until he graduates high school? I don't know, but maybe that's not in my top 5 anymore.
Right.
Or maybe we work that in somewhere else.
Which I think you were able to help me with some of that too, right? I feel like shaping what a healthy parenting plan looks like in Florida, um, it was something you were able to help me with, and again, I think we have a kid episode coming up
I think
soon,
we
so
should.
we won't beat that dead horse today. Um, but to come full circle on this, it's what we think the legal process is going to give us versus what we actively have control over and the mindset that we're creating for ourselves while we're going through the process. And then, I think it's healthy to say, for me at least, and for probably a lot of the people who come for legal services from you, is that they've never dealt with an attorney before in their life.
No, most people haven't,
Right.
and they don't know the system.
They don't. And so they're looking to you for a lot of answers that you're like, yeah, I see this every day. It's not going to work out the way that, but you don't have the time of day to walk someone through why. And a lot of times for us to get from point A to point B, we just have to understand why. And then we can move past it. It's just our nature as people.
Right.
And I know that after we did our session last week, I had a couple people reach out to me about, documenting appropriately and coming up with a good framework of parenting plans and what I will and will not tolerate. And so I just want to say, like, one of the things that I'm hoping to be able to offer to some of our viewers in the future is like an ebook that they can download and they can go in and click. And, it kind of answers some of their questions before they ever make it to an attorney. Maybe they're not ready to pull the trigger on a divorce just yet. But if it was something that was in the future, this is kind of what you need to be thinking about. And these are the questions that you probably need to present to your attorney. And these are some of the things that you may or may not have to compromise on. But maybe just like a resource for them to go into a meeting with you a little bit more prepared and understanding what they're looking to get out of their services with you and the divorce process altogether. So,
Right, and I think that's why all attorneys do consultations,
right.
right? For the most part, most clients won't call an attorney and just say, "I just wanna hire you and get divorced tomorrow." I mean,
Mhm.
it happens,
Oh,
but,
yeah.
um, the purpose of a consultation more often than not is really to explain the legal process at its simplest form, right? Like,
Yeah.
this'll happen, then this'll happen, and then this, and but, I think that's a huge part of it, and I would I would say that a good number of people who, if they at least do that consultation up front, will consider, "Let me try and work on it first." And we tell people all the time, "If you can figure this out and save a marriage,
Mhm.
kudos to you." And we've certainly seen it happen. We've also seen, if you can go back and maybe you start getting things in order
Mhm.
because you know what 5 years down the road is gonna look like. So maybe you prepare for that and give yourself, if you can live in this situation, whatever it might be, for X amount of time, you can be in a better position to make that transition because the
Yeah.
transition is the hardest part.
It is, and I read something somewhere, and I don't remember the numbers associated with it, but emotionally, a lot of women check out of their relationship before they ever walk away from their relationship too. So that was I like that what you just said. So I don't know why I needed to say that. Somebody needed to hear that. Um, but hey, I think today was a really great session. I mean, we covered a lot. We kind of laid up some things for you to look forward to. Again, we're having the conversations that most people in our industry don't typically have, and we want to hear from you. So, what are some things that you're looking for from your legal process to solve for you that it's currently not solving for you, or something that you're struggling with? I want to hear from you. Put it in the comments for us, and we'll pick a couple of questions that you drop in our comments to answer live next time. And then I'm going to toss it to Stacy to tell us bye.
Thank you guys so much for listening to us. We're here to share our stories, see how we can help you get through this process just by listening and making it easier for that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for tuning in. We're having so much fun with this process. We want to hear from you as well. What do you want to hear from us? What do you want to learn about? And what juicy stories do you want to hear from Stacy about? I'm just kidding. High conflict divorces that she could share with us. And if you are looking for some assistance to navigate through this difficult time in your life and you want someone to hold your hand through it or to help you see a little bit more of yourself as you transition, then my name is Chelsea Peace. My information is in the About Me section of this video. And thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.